Thanks for that. It's great to be back at 1-to-1 and see some familiar faces. Ed sort of touched on the Pilbara and the conglomerate story. I'll sort of try and take that a little bit further. This time last year, Ed was sort of showing people his nuggets, and we sort of went, wow, okay, is there really gold in these conglomerates, and what's the distribution? And we were in the area already with a sort of conventional resource of a couple of 100,000 ounces. We probably sort of focused on lithium as much as gold in the early days because we're right next to Pilbara minerals. And what we found is it's real. I mean, the distribution of the gold is fascinating. I mean, there's enough sort of evidence now, and I think Willem's sort of mentioned the Wits. I mean, it is the only other place that I know of where you get this broad gold distribution, and there's 30% of the world's golds come out of those horizons. So I'll sort of talk you through what we've found in the last 12 months. Just a brief corporate snapshot. We've got about 800 million shares on issue. We've been up to sort of 5.5 cents through the last 12 months, sitting at around 25 to 30 mil market cap and 3 odd cents now. We're at 6.5, we're probably closer to around 4 now, getting into October. So we're still pretty well funded for this style of exploration, which is really boots on the ground and a little bit old school, sort of panning and prospecting. So in that sense, apart from the fact that we have to use a helicopter to get around, because it's quite remote, we're quite able to get out and get a lot done for the cash that we've got available, which is quite important in this market. So our Pilbara sort of gold story started with a project called Linus Find, which was mined in the 90s, and they did 125,000 ounces and then moved the plant to another location in the Pilbara, and really not much work had been done on it since then. We did, through the first half of this year, a JORC upgrade and moved that from a couple of 100,000 ounces now to 643, and that's been a big stepping stone for the company. And I'll go through that project first because I think it plays an important part in how we tackle and deal with the conglomerates. We've got 1,100 square k's of tenure for the Pilbara conglomerates, and also we're now finding a substantial amount of visible gold, and I'll walk you through that. The other main project that we've got is south of Breaker Resources in the Kalgoorlie region, which is your typical Archean shear-hosted lode mineralisation. Ed was talking at Purdy's Reward in that Karratha Dampier area. The conglomerates have been found as far over as Marble Bar. That's sort of, going back 100 years, and we sit pretty much in the middle. And the distribution is literally 400, 500, 600 kilometres, in an east-west direction, and really 200, 300 kilometres north-south. And if somebody sort of says, I've got this geological model, you go and find a basalt, which is the purple on that map, and then you find the sediments underneath that, and guess what? You'll find gold. Well, that's what we did. I mean, that's quite astonishing, really, in this day and age of all our complicated models and things, that somebody can predict that you will find gold in a specific rock unit, which I guarantee you geologists walk over. They don't sample it. It looks like river rocks. It is not altered, right? It is not the sort of thing that anybody would sample. That's why this is also unique and why it's still there. So our Mount York project is a really conventional banded iron formation, 10, 20, 30 metres wide, 3.5 kilometres long now at our Mount York deposit. We sort of really put together Main Hill, Breccia Hill and Gossan Hill as one ore body, and that's sitting at about nearly 500,000 ounces. The grade's low at sort of 1.3 to 1.5 grams, but what it is sort of a base load of material that's just going to be there. If you're going to do mining, regularity is sort of good. What we can then do is add to that with high grade, and that's where the conglomerate comes in, but there's also other deposits to the north where we're getting sort of conventional shear-hosted material of higher grades. There's also higher grade zones within the banded iron formation which we can chase for sort of underground extensions. So the key now for us is we've got sort of a base amount. Let's go and find some high grade, and the conglomerates fit with that story perfectly. It's conventional. There's a lot more drilling that needs to be done. We think at the moment we'll just sort of take that slowly forward through the first 6 months of next year. Doing the conglomerate work is a lot easier and to be honest, better value for our shareholders, as it sort of provides some pretty interesting sort of price catalysts and excitement. As I said, it's already been mined, so we've got a previous feasibility study, which is fantastic, gives us a really good lot of base data, and we've got one large ore body that we can sort of work around. The resources sit within Australian dollar pit shells. So they're a lot closer to conversion than what old resources used to be, now that we sort of confine them with effectively first pass mining studies. So resources in the past weren't constrained. Now we constrain them with pit shells. So that nearly 500,000 ounces sits within an Aussie pit shell of 2,000. The 1,600 one is very similar, and I think the Aussie gold price today is over 1,700. So already we know and have a really good feel for what will fall into a reserve. So that's a great place to start. So I'll talk about the conglomerates. The red is where people have found gold in this same horizon. And where this horizon has been cut is different through the whole Pilbara. So what that tells you is it's likely that the whole horizon's mineralised. It hasn't been cut in the same place through the whole Pilbara. There's different parts of it, different erosional levels, but everywhere through there that you find it, you're getting gold. And that's backed up what we're finding locally. This time last year, Eric Sprott and the team were very keen on this story. They moved in very quickly, and they came to us and were keen on putting $5 million in just to get it started. And at that point, and Willem was right earlier, there was no conglomerate mapped. The only conglomerate was mapped as a Hardy formation, which is higher in the stratigraphic sequence. So the first thing we did was we went out there and said, is there any conglomerate? Well, our accountants can find that conglomerate. You can see it from the air. It was very easy to find. The next thing is there any gold in it? And the first work we did, we started to pan the soils, just sort of these sort of soil areas, and we started to find gold just using a pan. And what we've done is move on now to map the whole 22 kilometres that we've got. And there's repetitions of the geology. So it's like this: find the Mount Roe basalt, look for the conglomerate that sits underneath, and what we're doing is panning. We're not waiting for assays. I've talked to somebody about, what do you think is anomalous if you do stream sediment work? We look at the 95th percentile, and we'll go, if there's a few hundred parts per billion, we'd follow that up. That would be exciting. We're getting grams per tonne, and 35% of our samples that we take with stream sets have visible gold. Let that sink in. 35% just have visible gold. We don't need to go to the lab. They can follow it up straight away. We'll send it to the lab because it's good data. But we can rapidly do this in the field. And it's over the whole 22 kilometres. And there's more up in here as well. So we've got an enormous area. We are absolutely adding to the story. Now, up until recently, we had gold in the pans and we haven't found any nuggets. So we're a bit behind everybody else. So we found our first nugget patch. And what's really interesting about it is they're not all watermelon seeds. They're all different shapes. They're quite a consistent sort of size, but it sits exactly in the right area. It was recovered over a weekend, just here. There's the sort of basalt capping on this side, sediments, exactly in the right spot. But in soil, not in alluvial. So it's quite fascinating, really, that we've now added nugget patches. Since then, we're expanding and doing a lot more regional work. You can see on the map to the left, there's 50 colours in a pan down here. And that's about 1 kilometre away, and we know the stratigraphy is there. So the more work we do, the more gold we're finding. And we're getting a lot of people sort of telling us, there's a watermelon seed there, there's the nuggets. The Australians don't really believe it. Well, I think anybody who sort of comes up with an idea that says go out to a certain spot in the desert and you have to use the helicopter to get here, nobody's been here, there's no geological reports, and you can find gold like that, well, that's pretty exciting. From an exploration point of view and an investment point of view, I think that's very exciting. We didn't even really find a lot of conglomerate, so the jury's out as to whether you need conglomerate. I don't think you do. I think it'll just be, if this gold's precipitated out, it will be in various rock types. And that's probably why the nuggets we've got are a lot smaller. But there's a heap of it. The Mount Roe basalt sits there to the north. That is all our land tenure. You've got that whole escarpment to explore. And just for us, like I say, the next steps is to continue adding value by doing old-style prospecting grassroots. We're using panning, metal detectors, and things like that. Eventually, though, that's the sort of conglomerate that we've got, so we'll be trenching and things like that. Thanks for the opportunity, and we've got a booth here at number 42.